Have you ever wondered why English became so much powerful and influential language in India? Before arrival of East India Company in 1600, nobody spoke it, nobody needed it. So in this video, we are going to understand the evolution of English in India. But it is not with help of the traditional teaching method, but with help of the cinematic video. So you will learn the each factor behind the evolution of English in India. I am going you just sit back and enjoy this video.
A completely different India, a land where Sanskrit flourished in temples and centers of learning, a land where Persian was the language of administration and royal courts, a land where Arabic was studied in madrasa, a land rich in Tamil, Bengali, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada, Punjabi, and countless other languages. Education was already present. Knowledge was already present. Civilizations had already flourished for centuries. English was nowhere. Nobody spoke it. Nobody even imagined that one day it would become one of the most influential language in India. History was about to change, and that change arrived by sea. East India Company. On the 31st of December 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a royal charter to the trading company in England. This company was called the East India Company. At first, it had only one objective: trade. Nothing else. The company wanted Indian spices, Indian silk, Indian cotton, Indian goods, and most importantly, Indian wealth. So, ships began arriving on Indian shores. Factories were established. Trading centers were opened. Business expanded rapidly. But as the company became more involved in India, it realized something important. Trade was not enough. To operate effectively, they needed people who understood local customs. They needed interpreters. They needed clerks. They needed educated Indians who could help them manage administration and communication. Slowly, education became important, not for the benefit of Indians, but for the convenience of company itself. Christian missionary. Now, alongside the traders came another influential group, Christian missionaries. These missionaries had a very different objective. They were not interested in trade. They were interested in religion. They believed Christianity should spread throughout the world, and education became one of their most powerful tools. Their method was simple: open schools, teach children, spread Christian teachings. Many missionaries believed Indian society needed reform. They criticized practices they considered superstitious. They wanted education to become a means of social and religious transformation. Among these missionaries, one name is extremely important: William Carey. Remember this name carefully. William Carey arrived in India in 1793. By 1800, he had settled in Sirampore in Bengal. He established the Baptist mission there. But Carey was not only a missionary, he was also a linguist, translator, and educator. He translated the Bible into several Indian languages. He promoted printing. He encouraged education. He helped spread literacy. His influence on education was significant. However, the East India Company was not always comfortable with missionary activities. The company feared that aggressive religious activities might create unrest among Indians, and unrest was bad for business. As a result, missionary activities were often restricted. At this stage, educational development remained scattered and limited. No clear educational policy yet existed. Now, we arrive at another important figure, Warren Hastings, the first Governor General of India. Hastings believed something very interesting. He believed that if the British wanted to rule India effectively, they first needed to understand India, its traditions, its laws, its language, and its culture. And because of this belief, he supported institutions that promoted Indian learning. In 1781, the Calcutta Madrasa was established, and its purpose was to teach Islamic law and Arabic studies. Then in 1791, Jonathan Duncan established the Sanskrit College in Varanasi. Its purpose was to promote Hindu philosophy, Sanskrit learning, and traditional legal studies. Notice something important here. The British were not yet promoting English education. Instead, they were supported traditional Indian systems of learning. This approach later became known as Orientalism. The Orientalists believed that Indian civilization possessed valuable knowledge and deserved respect. Now, another remarkable figure enters in our story, Sir William Jones, a scholar of extraordinary ability. In 1784, he founded the Asiatic Society of Bengal. This society became a major center for the study of Indian history, literature, philosophy, and languages. Jones translated important Sanskrit texts into English. And the more he studied Sanskrit, the more impressed he became. In one famous observation, he declared that Sanskrit was more perfect than Greek and richer than Latin. Think about that. A British scholar publicly praising Sanskrit at a time. The work of Sir William Jones helped introduce Indian civilization of the wider world. And once again, we see that English education had not yet become dominant. The focus was still on understanding India rather than transforming India. Now we move to the year 1800. Lord Wellesley established Fort William College in Calcutta. At first glance, it appears to be British institution, and it was. But its purpose may surprise you. The college was created to train British civil servants in Indian languages. Students learned Bengali, Hindi, Persian, Arabic, Sanskrit. Why so? Because British officers needed these languages to govern effectively. Indian scholars were employed as teachers and writers. Textbooks were produced, translations were prepared, and something unexpected happened. The development of Indian prose accelerated, particularly in Bengali and Hindi. So, ironically, an institution created by the British ended up strengthening Indian vernacular literature. This is one of the fascinating contradictions in the history of English in India. And now we arrive at our first major turning point, the Charter Act of 1813. This is a landmark event. The East India Company's charter was renewed by British Parliament. But this time, an important educational provisions was added. For the first time in history, the British government officially accepted responsibility for Indian education. An annual sum of 1 lakh rupees was allocated for educational purpose. Today, 1 lakh rupees may not sound extraordinary, but in 1830, this was a historical decision. Education had now become a matter of government policies. However, a difficult question immediately emerged. How should this money be spent? Should it support Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic learning? Or should it promote English, education, and Western knowledge? No one had a clear answer. And this question would soon divide educational thinkers into two powerful groups, the Orientalists and the Anglicists. Their debate would shape the future of India. The man whose decision transformed the destiny of English in India is Thomas Babington Macaulay. But the Charter Act had created a problem. The British government had set aside 1 lakh rupees every year for Indian education. Yet, nobody could agree on how this money should be spent. And so, Indian education became a battlefield of a great intellectual war. On one side stood the Orientalists. They believed Indian ancient knowledge was priceless. They wanted Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian to flourish. They argued that Indians should learn through their own language and tradition. Leading Orientalists included H. H. Wilson, Colebrook, and James Prinsep. On the other side stood the Anglicists. They believed English was the language of science, progress, and modern civilization. According to them, government money should be spent on English education alone. Among the supporters were James Mill, Trevelyan, and a man who would soon dominate the entire debate, Thomas Babington Macaulay. For years, the argument continued. Meetings, reports, discussion, disagreement. The money remained largely unused. Then, before we reach Macaulay, we must meet one of the most extraordinary Indians of this 19th century, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Remember this name carefully. He is known as the father of modern India. Born in 1772, he was a scholar of astonishing brilliance. He knew Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic, Bengali, English, and several other languages. But Raja Ram Mohan Roy was more. He was a social reformer, a visionary, a bridge between old India and modern India. He opposed sati. He fought against child marriage. He challenged social inequality. And in 1828, he founded the Brahmo Samaj, a movement for religious and social reform. Now comes the surprising part. Raja Ram Mohan Roy supported English education. Not because he disliked Indian culture, but because he believed modern science and rational thinking were essential for Indian future. In 1817, he had established Hindu College in Calcutta and one of the earliest institutions of modern education in India. He was also the first great Indian English prose writer. His essays, petitions, and letters displayed remarkable command of English. For Roy, English was not a threat. It was a tool for modernization, a path towards knowledge, a path towards reform, and a path towards progress. And while Roy was shaping modern India, another young genius was inspiring a new generation, Henry Vivian Derozio. He was born in 1809 in Calcutta. He was a teacher, a poet, patriot, and revolutionary thinker. At only 17 years of age, he became a teacher at Hindu College. Imagine, a teenager teaching future leaders of India. Derozio encouraged students to question everything, to think independently, to challenge blind traditions. His followers became famous as the Young Bengal movement. They believed in rationalism, freedom of thought, and intellectual courage. Derozio was also a poet. His most celebrated poem, To India, My Native Land, expressed deep love for his country. Because of his contribution, he is remembered as the first significant Indian English poet. Sadly, his life was very short. He died in 1831 at just 22 years of age. But his ideas survived and his influence continued. He became one of the earliest voices of Indian writing in English. And now we arrived at the most dramatic turning point in the entire story of English in India. The year is 1834. A young British politician arrived in India. His name, Thomas Babington Macaulay. Soon, he became president of the Committee of Public Instruction, the very committee responsible for deciding India's educational future. The Orientalists and Anglicists had argued for years. Now Macaulay would settle the debate with a single document, a document that changed India forever. Macaulay's Minute, 1835. On 2 February 1835, Macaulay wrote his famous Minute on Indian education. And its recommendations were revolutionary. First, English should be the medium of instruction. Second, government funds should be spent only on English education. Third, Macaulay made a statement that remains controversial even today. He claimed that a single shelf of good European books was worth the entire literature of India and Arabia. He defined the purpose of British education in India and remembered this line for your exam. He wanted to create a class of people who were Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinion, moral, and intellect. This educated Indians would act as intermediaries between British rulers and Indian society. Fifth, support for Oriental education should end. And sixth, government funding for printing Oriental books should stop. The message was clear. English had won. The Orientalists had lost. Now, Lord William Bentinck approves Macaulay's recommendation. In March 1835, an official resolution was passed. English became the dominant language of higher education. The consequence was enormous. In 1837, English replaced Persian as the language of court. In 1844, Lord Hardinge announced that people educated in English would receive preferences in government jobs. Suddenly, English meant opportunity, English meant employment, English meant status, English meant power. And from that moment onward, the spread of English accelerated across India. But Macaulay's minute was the only beginning. 20 years later came another document, Magna Carta of Indian Education. The year was 1854 and the document was Wood's Despatch. Now, unlike Macaulay, who focused mainly on English education, Wood Despatch tried to build an entire educational system for India. Its recommendations were far-reaching. First, universities should be established at Calcutta, Bombay, Madras. For the first time, India was being given a modern university system. Second, every province should have a separate department of education. Education was no longer an occasional activity. It was becoming an organized administrative responsibility. Third, private schools should receive government financial support. This became famous as grant-in-aid system, a system that continues in different forms even today. Fourth, education should be provided through both English and Indian vernacular language. Unlike Macaulay's English-only approach, Wood recognized the importance of regional language. Fifth, teachers training institutions should be established because good education requires trained teachers. Sixth, women education should be encouraged, a progressive idea for its time. And seventh, Wood's Despatch supported the famous downward filtration theory. According to this theory, educate the upper and middle classes first, and education will gradually filter down to the masses. Whether this story succeeded or not is still debated, but at the time it became a central part of British educational policy. It created administrative structure of modern Indian education. It encouraged schools, universities and teacher training, and it laid the foundation upon which much of India's education system would later be built. And soon, its most visible recommendations become reality. And now, the ideas of Macaulay's and the recommendation of Wood Despatch was about to become reality. The year was 1857, a year remembered for rebellion, for resistance, for revolution. But it was also a year that transformed Indian education forever. Because in this year, India received the first modern universities. The first three universities in 1857, three universities were established. University of Calcutta, University of Bombay, and University of Madras. These institutions were modeled on the University of London, but there was something unusual about them. They were not teaching universities, they were affiliating universities. This means they mainly conducted examinations, awarded degrees, and controlled colleges. Teaching was done by affiliated colleges. The universities acted as supervisors and examiners. This system would dominate Indian higher education for decades. And over time, more universities appeared. Punjab universities, Allahabad universities, Banaras Hindu University, which was founded by the great nationalist Madan Mohan Malviya. Aligarh Muslim universities encouraging from the vision of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Delhi University, the British government knew that Wood Despatch needed review, and so another important commission was appointed. The year was 1882. Lord Ripon appointed a commission to evaluate the progress of education in India. The chairman was Sir William Hunter. Therefore, it became famous as the Hunter Commission. The commission asked a simple question: had education really reached ordinary Indians? The answer was not enough, and therefore Hunter made several important recommendations. First, primary education should be the responsibility of local bodies, not the central government. Second, at the primary level, mother tongue should be the medium of instruction, not English. This was a major shift. Third, secondary education should have two streams: a literary stream for students preparing for university and a vocational stream for students preparing for work. Fourth, government should gradually withdraw from directly managing schools and encourage private institutions. For the first time after Macaulay's primary education and regional languages received serious attention, the focus was slowly shifting from elites to ordinary people. But soon another powerful British ruler arrived, and he wanted much tighter control over universities. His name was Lord Curzon. The year was 1904. Lord Curzon believed universities were becoming centers of political activity. He wanted stronger government control. As a result, he introduced the Indian Universities Act 1904. Its major provisions included reduction in the size of university senate, greater government control over university administration, strict rules for affiliation, and encouragement of research and fellowship. Curzon believed he was improving efficiency. Many Indians disagreed. They saw this act as an attempt to suppress intellectual freedom, to control higher education, and to weaken nationalist ideas. Ironically, the act had the opposite effect. It increased political awareness among educated Indians and strengthened the desire for self-rule. Education was no longer merely academic, it was becoming political. And as universities expanded, new questions emerged. Were these universities really serving students properly? That question led to another major commission. Now the year was 1917. The government appointed a commission to study the problems of Calcutta University. The chairman was Dr. Sadler, and the report appeared in 1919. The Sadler Commission became one of the most influential commissions in Indian education history. Its recommendations were revolutionary. First, school education should last 12 years before university admission. Second, intermediate education, what we now think of as classes 11 and 12, should be separated from universities. Third, universities should become teaching universities, not merely examining bodies. Fourth, postgraduate education should be strengthened. Fifth, a board of secondary education should be established. Sixth, women education deserved special attention. The commission believed universities should not simply conduct exams, they should create knowledge, teach students, promote research, and develop intellectual life. Many later reforms were influenced by Sadler ideas, but another committee soon pointed to a different problem: not expansion, not structure, but quality. Now the year was 1929. Sir Philip Hartog chaired a committee under the Sargent Commission, and its message was simple and clear: quality over quantity. Hartog observed that schools were expanding rapidly, but many students were dropping out. Many were repeating classes. Resources were being wasted. Therefore, the committee argued, do not expand blindly. First, improve existing schools, then spend. It also establishes that English should not be imposed at lower level of education. The focus should be on strong foundation, not rapid growth without quality. A practical recommendation, one that remains relevant even today. But now, a completely different education philosophy was about to emerge, not from Britain, not from colonial administrators, but from the leader of Indian freedom movement, Mahatma Gandhi. The year was 1937. Mahatma Gandhi proposed a radically different vision of education. At Wardha, he presented what became known as the Wardha scheme or Nai Talim, new education. Gandhi believed British education had created dependence, alienation, and excessive emphasis on book learning. He wanted education rooted in Indian life. His ideas were revolutionary. First, education should be through the mother tongue, not English. Second, learning should be centered around productive craft, spinning, weaving, carpentry, agriculture. Children should learn by doing. Third, school should become self-supporting. Students' productive work could help cover educational cost. Fourth, education should develop the body, mind, and soul together. And fifth, 7 years of free and compulsory education for all children. This was a direct challenge to Macaulay's educational model. Macaulay's emphasized English and Western knowledge. Gandhi emphasized Indian language and practical skill. In many ways, this debate still continues in India today. But before that, India became independent. One final major educational blueprint appeared. Now, the year was 1944. Sir John Sargent prepared a comprehensive education plan for India. This is called Sargent Report, and its recommendations were ambitious, very ambitious. First, free and compulsory education for all children aged 6 to 14. Second, pre-primary education for children aged 3 to 6. Third, two types of high schools, academic and vocational. And fourth, a 3-year university course after high school. Fifth, special schools for differently abled children. Sixth, adult literacy programs. And the vision was enormous. The plan aimed to transform Indian education over 40 years. But history had another plans. Because India was moving rapidly towards freedom, and freedom would bring a new question, perhaps the biggest language question in modern Indian history. Then came the historic day, 15 August 1947. India became independent. The British Empire had ended. A new nation was born. There was celebration, hope, excitement, and dreams of future. But almost immediately, a difficult question appeared. What should be the language of independent India? Hindi supporters argued that Hindi should become the national language. Many people in South India strongly opposed the idea. They feared linguistic domination. Others argued that English should continue. The debate became intense, emotional, and politically sensitive. Finally, the Constitution of India offered a compromise. On 26 January 1950, the Constitution came into effect. Article 343 declared Hindi in Devanagari script as the official language of the Union. However, English would continue as an associate official language for 15 years until 1965. But when 1965 approached, large protests erupted, especially in Tamil Nadu. As a result, English remained, and through the Official Language Act, it continued alongside Hindi. The languages debate had not ended. In many ways, it had only begun. And now, independent India had a new challenge. How should a free nation educate its people? To answer the question, independent India appointed its first educational commission, the Radhakrishnan Commission. The year was 1948. Independent India appointed its first major education commission. Its chairman was Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, scholar, philosopher, teacher, and later became the President of India. This commission focused mainly on university education. Its recommendation was extremely important. First, English should continue as the medium of instruction at the university level. According to Commission, India was not yet ready to completely replace English. Second, the Commission made a famous observation. It said that English often divides society into two groups. The few who govern and the many who are governed. Remember the quote for examination. Third, universities should maintain high academic standards. Fourth, residential universities should be encouraged. Fifth, a 3-year degree course was recommended. Sixth, religious and moral education should have a place in higher education. The Commission attempted to balance Indian values with modern knowledge, but soon attention shifted from universities to school, and for that another commission was appointed. The year was 1952. The chairman was Dr. A. Lakshman Swamy Mudaliar. This commission focused on secondary education. Its recommendations shaped Indian schooling for decades. First, English should be taught as second language from class 6. Second, an early version of three-language formula was suggested. Third, multi-purpose schools should be established. Schools combining academic and vocational education. Fourth, the 11+2 pattern was recommended. 11 years of schooling followed by 2 years of intermediate education. Fifth, examinations reforms were suggested. The commission believed education should be practical and relevant to life. And while school education was being reformed, higher education needed a stronger regulator, and that led to an institution. The year was 1956. The University Grant Commission Act was passed. The UGC was formally established. Its responsibilities included maintaining standards in universities, providing grants, regulating higher education, and ensuring quality across institutions. Even today, the UGC remains one of the most important educational bodies in India. And for UGC students, this is the institution behind the examination itself. The language debated had never truly disappeared. As 1965 approached, many non-Hindi speaking states became worried. They feared that English would disappear from administration and higher education. To address these concerns, the Official Language Act of 1963 was passed. It confirmed that English would continue as an associate official language even after 1965. This decision changed Indian linguist future. English remained present in courts, administration, parliament, universities, and higher education. English was no longer a temporary language. It had become a permanent part of modern India. Now we arrive at one of the most important commissions in Indian education history, the Kothari Commission, chaired by Dr. D.S. Kothari. Now its reports titled as Education and National Development. This was the most comprehensive education commission India has ever seen. Its recommendations were revolutionary. First, the famous 10+2+3 structure. 10 years of schooling, 2 years of higher secondary, 3 years of university education. Even today, this structure remains familiar across India. Second, the three-language formula was formally recommended. Students should learn a regional language or mother tongue. Hindi where appropriate and English or another modern Indian language. Third, English should continue in higher education. Fourth, the Commission made an important distinction. Teaching English as a language skill is different from teaching English literature. This distinction remains important even today. Fifth, a common school system should be developed. Sixth, education should promote national development and social transformation. Seventh, government expenditure on education should reach 6% of national income, a target that continues to be discussed even today. The Kothari Commission became the foundation for India's first national education policy. The year was 1968. India announced the first national education policy, based largely on the recommendations of the Kothari Commission's official adopted of three-language formula. Promotion of regional language. English as a library language and language of higher education. Equal focus is given to science and mathematics. Free and compulsory education up to age 14. And the famous target of spending 6% of national income on education. For the first time, India had a written national education vision. Now, 2 decades later, another major policy appeared, the National Policy Education 1986, under the government of Rajiv Gandhi. Its theme was Education for Equality. The objective was simple, quality education for everyone. And its major initiative included Operation Blackboard, providing basic facilities in primary schools. Blackboards, furniture, books, and other essentials. Navodaya Vidyalayas, residential schools for talented rural students, ensuring that poverty would not prevent excellence. IGNOU, the establishment of Indira Gandhi National Open University, making distance education accessible to millions. Continuation of 10 plus 2 plus 3, the educational structure remained intact. Vocational education, greater emphasis on skills and employability. Computer literacy. For the first time, computers entered educational policy, a sign that India was preparing for the future. Program of action. Now we are heading towards the year 1992. Union Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. The 1986 policy was revised. Now this revision became known as Program of Action or POA 1992. The District Primary Education Program, DPEP, improving primary education at district level. Focus on girls' education, removing barriers preventing girls from attending school. It strengthened Operation Blackboard, improving school infrastructure, expansion of non-formal education, helping children unable to attend regular schools. India was now moving steadily towards universal education. At the same time, English was producing a new generation of writers. And that story is equally important. As English education spread, Indian became reading Shakespeare, Milton, Keats, Shelley, and gradually they began writing in English themselves. Pioneers were remarkable. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the first great Indian prose writer. Henry Vivian Derozio, the first significant Indian English poet. Madhusudan Dutt, early experimenter with English writing. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, author of Rajmohan's Wife in 1864, widely regarded as the first Indian novel in English. Toru Dutt, a gifted poet remembered for a sheep gleaned in French fields. Rabindranath Tagore, translator of Gitanjali, winner of Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913, the first Asian Nobel laureate in literature. And now we are moving towards 2020. We arrived at present. The most recent educational reform, National Education Policy 2020, announced after a gap of 34 years. Its reforms are extensive, 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 structure. Foundational stage, preparatory stage, middle stage, secondary stage, replacing the older structure. Mother tongue focus, regional language or mother tongue up at least class 5, preferably till class 8. Learning multiple languages, celebrating linguistic diversities. English remains important, but not as a language of domination, rather as a communication skill. Students can combine arts, science, commerce, and vocational subjects. Certificates after 1 year, diploma after 2 years, degrees after 3 years. Digital storage and transfer of academic credits. Skill development from class 6 onwards. And it continued commitment to educational investment. Promotion of Sanskrit and classical traditions also present. Now many schools view NEP 2020 as a major attempt to balance global knowledge with Indian education traditions. And now, the final question. Where does English stand today? Today, English is an associate official language of India. It is used in Supreme Court, High Court, Parliament, Central Administration, University, Science, Technology, and Global Communication. India is one of the largest English-speaking countries in the world. Indian English, which is called Hindi, had developed its own identity, its own vocab, its own expression, its own style. Words like prepone, co-brother, out of station reflect uniquely Indian usage. English also remains a language of opportunity. It opens doors to employment, technology, research, and international communication. And at the same time, it continues to raise questions about inequality and access. And in literature, Indian writers such as Salman Rushdie, Arundhati Roy, Amitav Ghosh, Vikram Seth, and many more, they have earned global recognition. So Indian English literature is now studied across the world. And so, our journey comes to an end. a journey that began in 1600 with traders arriving for commerce, a journey that passed through Macaulay, would dispatch Hunter, Sadler, Hartog, Gandhi's Talim, Sargent Report, Radhakrishnan Commission Report, Mudaliar, Kothari Commission, NDP, POA, and finally an AB 2020. From a foreign trading language to an associate official language, from colonial classroom to global literature, from administration to technology. The story of English in India is not just the story of language, it is the story of education, identity, power, culture, debate, and change. Remember the timeline, remember the commission, and remember the key recommendation. And no question on English in India will be able to stop you to crack your paper. Thanks for watching our video and all the very best for your